YouTube, what's going on? Okay. Unfortunately, in the black community, we don't understand mindset. We want to base somebody's value off of so many different things as opposed to just sitting down and talking to somebody. We want to look at what they drive, where they grew up. Not to say that your upbringing doesn't play part in who you are, but we'll look at somebody who has come from money or a certain background and automatically assume that they're on point, and then look at somebody who may not have grown up in that condition, right? And quite frankly, they were born into it, so they didn't control it, mind you. They didn't say, I'm gonna be born in the inner city, and I'm gonna be born to a single mother and a dad who's in and out of jail, right? They didn't plan for that, right? So we look at those people and we give them a negative viewpoint automatically, unfortunately. Yeah, we have self-determination, don't get me wrong, but also, people are nothing more than products of their environment. That's why I always laugh when people want to look down on other people as if they chose how they were born, right? I didn't choose, I didn't say, oh, I think I'm going to grow up in this environment and I think I'm going to grow up in this middle-class neighborhood, right? No. I was fortunate enough to be born into a system that was able to work for me. But like I said, even with all that being said, you define who you are. If you want to truly know somebody, speak to somebody. It's as simple as that. Don't automatically give people points because of where they grew up or if they have money. At the end of the day, it's not a substitute. Talk to somebody. It's as simple as that. Right? I got a PM from a young gentleman who, African American, I believe. He's African American, and his girlfriend's African American. They both are at the same Ivy League school, both getting into it's some science-related field. I believe they're both pursuing their master's degree, and I applaud their relationship on all levels, right? They're trying to build something, and they're pursuing academic and professional interests, which is always a plus as well. But here's the snag: she grew up, middle class suburb. He came from the inner city type of environment, and because of that, her parents don't want to deal with him. Right? And according to the PM, they often tell the daughter that, how come she can't get another black person from the suburbs who, comes from this background, this, that, and the third, as if simply coming from that background means that you're a good person. Right? And, it's real unfortunate, right? Because they're both in school. That's the sad thing about it. And according to the PM, they're both at an Ivy League school. Right? So even though they were born on two different sides of the tracks, they're both at the same point. Right? And this is especially even more upsetting knowing that the girlfriend's father hasn't embraced him. Hasn't necessarily been on some like, yo, congratulations, young man. I see what you're doing. It took a lot for you to make it out of that situation, and now you're here. And that's what kills me. Right, and I guess it kind of speaks to even my feelings towards older black men, the older generation, about how they do so much criticizing, but they never want to congratulate the black men who are actually trying to do something. Right, who don't want to congratulate us for all the bullshit that we're going through, because once again, whose fathers abandoned us, right? When I looked to my father, my own father, I'm like, yo, Dad, it was your group, right? It was your friends, your homeboys that put a lot of black men in the position that they are now, right? So it's unfortunate when then you have that same generation that will not acknowledge the black men who are actually trying to do something, have that helping hand, be that mentor, have those words of wisdom. So I look at this young brother and what he's going through, and the sad thing is he's probably and still is going through so much, right? Because of him simply being a black male, because he didn't come from money, because, he especially at Ivy League school where everybody else comes from money and people are looking down on him, you're the inner city kid and, how'd you make it here in front of action? So to be going through all that, okay, but then to be fortunate enough to have a relationship with another, black person, a black woman, right? And yes, they're romantically involved, but just to have a friendship also, right? You're like, yes, there is hope, but then to have the parents that will look down on him, it sucks. Yeah, people sometimes have this whole idea, man, whatever on your family, I'm dating you or I'm marrying you, forget your family. But it's really unfortunate, right? It goes back to the whole idea of the son without the father. A lot of black men, we do need approval from the older generation sometimes. Everybody needs it, right? To say, good job, that pat on the back, right? So when I read the PM, that was the first thing that popped up in my head, right? The fact that the father hasn't even had a conversation with him, shook his hand, what's going on, how do you think? I mean, that's the part that is really heartbreaking, really. I could just imagine myself in that position and how I would feel. Yeah, part of me would be like, man, forget you, but I would be upset. Right, to know that I've been through so much, but I'm still being judged by another black male, right? That's the sad thing about it, because I know the parents don't approve, but if the father approved, the mother would go along. But because the father is on some, why are you dating this guy? The mother's just going to co-sign, the feelings and the sentiments, right? It's like, it's hard. Like, I don't even know what to say in terms of what he can do, right? Because to me, the damage has already been done. I could already see it now. They make it, he's successful, and all of a sudden, mommy and daddy want to embrace them. Oh, son, we love you. Now that, he's making good money. And I'm like, yo, the damage is already done, right? So, in that exact situation, can anything ever be done, for that relationship between her parents and him? I don't know, right? But all I know is that this situation speaks to the bullshit that I'm talking about. The refusal to sit down and talk to somebody, right? The refusal, to judge somebody, another black person, based off of what they think and what they're trying to do. But we rely on having money. We rely on trying to use where they grew up as some indicator of who they really are. And the sad thing is, this brother's already proven that he's on the right track, right? This brother's not fronting. He's not trying to put up a front. I can understand if the parents have some resentment because he may be saying all the right things, but he's not legit, right? Because I have a little sister of my own. So, and I kind of, I'm not supposed to view myself as her father, on occasion. So I can see how they feel in terms of, who's this guy trying to front and act like, he's this well-to-do person, where's his values, look at where he grew up. But, I mean, look at what this brother's done. Look at what he's done. Right? And where he's trying to go. You can only fake it for so long. This is what obsesses me in the black community about how many people always say I got misled, or she wasn't who she said she was, or he misled me and led me astray. You can only fake it. Like I said before, you give somebody time and they will sell themselves to be good people, or they will hang themselves. Give it time. And the sad thing is, you have a brother here who has put in the work, right? So he's really not somebody who's faking it, but you have that older generation not approving him, right? Looking down on him as if they didn't come from that same sort of environment, right? As if they too were born into the middle class and there's some big divide. And this is what kills me, when you have so many people who are still making their way out of the inner city hood environment and getting into the suburbs. But we act as if we're separated by generations. No. Right? It's crazy. So, that's my take on it. It's just my feelings. This also reminds me really quick of a dynamic on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that a lot of people didn't pick up on. Phil always had an issue with Will, right? Because Will reminded Phil of who he used to be, right? And Vivian, before they replaced her, always used to be that reminder to Phil. When Phil used to come down hard on Will, she always used to say, do you remember how you were? Do you remember how we were? Do you remember where we grew up and how our upbringing was? And then he calms down, right? Always that voice of reason. So I think if you are an older black person from a different generation who may be watching this, I don't know, y'all have to remember where you came from as well, and not reject people who may not come from the place you find yourself now, or the world that your kids are lucky enough to be born into, right? Because this situation, is really tragic. You guys take it easy. God bless.